Good morning and good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the Americas and EMEA episode. We're delighted to have you with us today. Let's jump in. We've got quite a bit to cover, so let's run over the agenda. So we're going to look at the impact of privacy reforms. Now, this, regardless of your geography, is something that seems to be popping up everywhere. So we just want to give you a little bit of a reminder of how Eloqua can support you and assist you in that process. Make sure you're compliant, which is obviously the objective most of us have. We then want to look at some of the functional tools that you've got within Eloqua to help you achieve a marvelous and memorable customer experience. So we'll look at that as well. Then just some ideas on building a user-friendly preference center. How do we do that? It comes down largely to the good questions that we ask. Okay, we can move beyond what's your first name, your last name, your email address, and we can move on to other types of questions, which can help identify personas and a whole range of different things. So we'll have a look at that as well. We do have a few points to cover for you with the 25D release of Eloqua, which just took place or is actually rolling out as we speak. Some clients will be on it already. The last take place at the end of this month. And of course, Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. So in relation to Q&A and questions and even Zoom emoticons, you can give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever you prefer. We'd love to hear from you, but please, feel free to ask questions as we move through the morning. It's my morning, by the way, so your afternoon, your morning, depending on where you are. Okay, my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today. It's great to be with you, and Adrian Jones, our CEO and founder, is assisting with Q&A and chat. So hit him up. Got questions? Go ahead and ask. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so the first one that we wanted to look at is privacy reforms, how to turn compliance into a competitive edge. And look, the nutshell there to turn it into a competitive edge is A, to make sure that you are compliant. That's probably the first thing, but also about building an environment of trust where people feel comfortable, they know your brand, or they're getting to know your brand, whichever it may be, and they feel comfortable and they're happy to share information with you. Let's have a look. So at the outset, the key thing to think about is the opt-in, and this in Eloqua speak is the globally subscribed scenario. Now, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. This step is critical and fundamental as marketers, certainly as email marketers. And what I've done here is just capture some of the various compliance or legislative programs that are impacted in various geographies around the world. We've got the European Union with their GDPR. In Australia, we're looking at what's called the Privacy Act, which is what this all rolls into. California has the CCPA, Virginia, the VCDPA. Got to love all these acronyms, right? And then if I haven't got your jurisdiction covered, well, you're somewhere on earth. So fingers crossed you're aware and up to speed. So they opt in. The opt-in is the critical one. And in order to get the opt-in right, what we need to do is understand how Eloqua works as well. Now, Eloqua can support you. We assist clients across the European Union, North America, Australia, Asia, etc. So we're familiar with these different things and these different processes, I suppose. But fundamentally, when an email comes into Eloqua, the thing we need to understand is that they are opted in. Okay, and Eloqua assumes that based on the fact that you hopefully have processes in place as an organization that would enable that to happen. So not every single email from the CRM just comes flooding into Eloqua. Maybe it's a membership database, whatever it may be. They don't just come flooding into the platform, that there are actually business processes in place to support that. And then when they arrive in Eloqua, yes, we know they're opted in. So there are some key pieces of data that you typically need to work with and to hold on to in relation to the opt-in. And I would always encourage you to seek legal advice from either in-house or external counsel on this particular point. And because it will differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but this is pretty much a basic. So the date of the original opt-in is critical. Now, it's not always going to be the date the person or the contact was created, but often it is. Not always, but often it is. The other thing is to understand what opt-in means in their jurisdiction. So not your jurisdiction, but their jurisdiction. And this is particularly relevant for organizations. For example, I'm an American-based company. Scenario here, by the way. I'm an American-based company. and I have registered offices within the European Union. So right there, based on that criteria, from our understanding, then your organization communicating with Europeans within the EU, it's required of you to conform to the GDPR legislation, which has a whole raft of requirements. That's what I mean by their jurisdiction. Okay, it's the people you're talking to and where they are. The source of the opt-in is also a critical one. Critical, probably more so from your point of view, but worthwhile storing in the platform. Okay, so did they come in via a form? Did they hit the website, find some content, love it, fill in a form and download it? That's the first time they've come into your system. We want to hold on to that. Maybe people are coming in from your CRM or a membership database type platform, whichever it may be. They're coming into your platform as well, into Eloqua. So we want to make sure that we bring that information with them. The email address, of course, is the key one, but the reason I've highlighted it here is that sometimes, certainly the case within the Australian market, the opt-in is generally linked to the email address or a mobile phone number, not to the human. An example, in Australia, we had a large grocery store chain who was fined a couple of $1 million because, for example, what was happening, and the names are changed to protect the innocent or the guilty, depending how you look at them, Mr. and Mrs. Jones shared an email account. Mrs. Jones was happy to continue getting emails from the grocer. Mr. Jones was annoyed, so Mr. Jones unsubscribed. Now, the grocer had their system configured with two IDs, one for Mr. Jones, one for Mrs. Jones, but it was in fact the same email address. So the legislation is very clear. The opt-in belongs to the email address, and it doesn't matter if there are 1, 2, 5, 10, or 20 humans who have access to that email account. It's the email account that unsubscribed. So Mr. Jones unsubscribed, and they got fined because they weren't compliant, because they kept emailing Mrs. Jones at the same email account. So just something to be aware of and to think about. Profile data, of course, is pretty cool. We obviously want to know who we're talking to, the first name, last name as well, preferably. Their country is probably a good baseline. And in some cases, the state. As we saw within the United States, you've got different requirements from California versus Virginia, for example. And I'm sure there are other complexities within the market as well. So getting down to that same sort of level is key. Now, what do you do when you get that data? Well, look, why do we keep that data? Well, unfortunately, it has to do with legality. You know, if someone is challenging you and saying, I never opted in, you want to be able to find that contact in your database within Eloqua and be able to say very explicitly that on the 14th of June, 2008, you opted in because you filled in this form, which accessed this particular content. Now you can do that. Now, the best place to store that information for posterity or to keep the lawyers happy is a custom object. So if you save that information to a custom object, you'll be in a much better position. Crucially, that data doesn't get deleted. The problem with the contact, which is designed to do, is as new information comes in, it overwrites the information currently sitting in the field. And that's how the contact is designed to work. It's always the most current. But the custom object can behave differently to that. So just a tip for you, and hopefully that helps in giving you some idea around compliance. All right, so how do we get Eloqua to help you do more? Of course, that's always the objective, right? So let's jump in and have a look at some of the functional tools that Eloqua offers you to build out this great preference center. That is the objective of today's call. Okay, so first one is we want to understand how people are going to potentially get to this preference center. So there are a range of ways, and the pathways potentially are a few, but these are the typical ones that you would identify. Possibly the most common one is via the email footer in all of your emails, and there'll be a link, and it may say something like manage your preferences, unsubscribe, something like that. The other one would be from the website. So maybe on your website, you're proactively driving people to the preference center in order to sign up, okay, share their preferences, learn more, subscribe now, whatever it may be. And then obviously socials is the other one. So many of the social platforms will often provide an option for you to add buttons and those sorts of things. LinkedIn, I think, is one example where you can then send people off to your preference center. The key thing here to understand, I suppose, too, is that this is a different path for different people and often with different intent. So if somebody's looking at your email and they scroll to the bottom of the email to find the unsubscribe link, their objective and their mindset at that time is going to be quite different to someone who's on your website and enjoying what they're looking at and thinking, okay, I'd like to learn more about these people. How can I subscribe? And so they find the subscribe option, which takes them to the preference center. So two different people, two very different scenarios. So we need to think about what our objective is with what's going to happen next. So what does that look like from an email point of view? You've seen these 1,000 times at Marketing Cube. This is our email footer. A couple of things to notice. First one, notice we personalize the footer. So you'll see that's a field merge that's sitting right there. We also identify the subscription that the email relates to. The reason we do that is that in the hope that they do click through here with the objective to unsubscribe, they're able to understand that they can actually just unsubscribe themselves from one email group versus from opting out completely. Okay. And so unsubscribe and manage your preferences, in fact, go to the exact same page. We're just trying to use two different terms or phrases there to get a message across that, you can actually manage this yourself. You don't have to, it's not all or nothing. It's not a binary exercise. Yeah, you can just stop hearing about one thing. You don't have to opt out completely. This one over here on the right, though, click here to update your details. That's really probably more so designed exactly for you as a marketer using Eloqua. It's a form, and you could argue it's a crazy long form, but it's a form that shows you all of the information that we have that you've shared with us. So it'll be your first name, your last name, your job title, company name, mobile phone, cell phone if you've shared it, the country, state, that sort of information that you've shared with us. And just gives you an opportunity to update that. And it's really just to showcase a bit of the Eloqua functionality more than anything else. But if I was to do it and I wasn't Marketing Cube and I wasn't selling a platform called Eloqua, I probably would change that experience ever so slightly. But just for the point. All right. Then the other way that people will get to, as I said, is potentially from the website. So under the About Us area of the website, you can see Subscribe Now. And this is available through the navigation. And we have it in other various parts of the website. There'll be other places where we have calls to action, sort of banners and things to incentivize and encourage people to subscribe. So our focus today is very much on the subscription and the preference management side of things, not just simply on subscription. So it's very much a combination of the two. Now, some of the above is what can happen after people subscribe. So once they come in and they fill in the preference center, we then want to think about what's the next step in the journey? Where are we going to take people from here? Is it a welcome campaign? Is it an onboarding campaign? And is there a difference? I'd argue there is. Maybe it's a reactivation campaign. Now, I've thrown that in there, not because somebody would come in net new and fill in your preference center and then immediately fall into the reactivation campaign, but the fact that you're thinking and designing and pondering the idea of a preference center, it can in fact be a tremendous tool to help you in a reactivation campaign if that's on your agenda. So that's why that one's sitting there. And then, of course, maybe a sign-up campaign. It's just a real push to drive people to come and join you and to sign up and to learn more. And so the preference center could be a good vehicle to put people through in order to do that. Just to break down that difference. So a welcome campaign, typically, and this may just be vernacular and using different words, I would describe the welcome campaign typically as people who have just come into the database, they're net new, never heard from them before, they're not paying customers necessarily. And so what you're doing is you're really welcoming them to the brand, helping them understand what you do, the resources you offer, the services, the products, those sorts of things that you do. An onboarding campaign, I would suggest to you, is for a new customer or member, somebody who's actually parted with some cash in order to work with you. And so an onboarding campaign and the content that you would deliver typically in an onboarding campaign is probably going to be quite different to the welcome campaign. So something to think about there. And as I said, the reactivation campaign, it's more granular. You need to probably jump into your segment, identify people who are not engaged, who are not opening emails, importantly, maybe those who you're not sending emails to. And the preference center can be a great tool to assist you in that reactivation campaign concept. So just something to think about, and another use of the preference center. And of course, a sign-up campaign. Now, a sign-up campaign, depending on the nature of it, if it's promotional, maybe the preference center is too much. Maybe there's too many questions being asked. Maybe a sign-up campaign could be something nice and short and sweet, first name, last name, email. Maybe that's it. But what you could do is in the autoresponder from the sign-up campaign, invite those people to come to the preference center to share more about themselves. So again, the preference center can be used in multiple campaigns. Don't think of it as just this asset sits there when people are annoyed and they click on unsubscribe in the footer of your email. The preference center can be so much more. All right, so once we understand our objective and are clear on what we're trying to do, we want to design a user experience that suits and is appropriate. And so which parts of Eloqua can help you do it? Well, when I started putting out these dots, I realized I could probably fill up the whole page because really every part of Eloqua can assist you. But I would suggest that the ones I've got here would probably be your bare minimum in relation to what you're going to do in relation to building out a preference center. Let's dive in a little bit deeper to have a look at the preference center and understand a bit better what it might actually look like from an asset point of view. So first one, of course, is the landing page. Now, I would encourage you very strongly to make sure you use Eloqua to deliver this experience, not your CMS. There are a whole swag of reasons why the landing page is a much smarter solution than the CMS. Usually, the landing page is in itself is a much more intelligent piece of technology. We can use field merges. We can put on Eloqua forms that can deliver a much nicer experience. So think about that. The just simple fact that you can say, welcome, John, welcome, Mary, welcome, Fred, whatever the case may be, just to address the person by name at the bare minimum is a great thing. Okay. The Eloqua form, again, don't use the CMS. The CMS, typically, the forms are quite dumb if we consider smart forms versus dumb forms. Okay, so the Eloqua form, it can pre-populate. We can use progressive profiling, so we're only asking questions that we don't already know the answers to. It's just generally a smarter way for you to grow your much needed first-party data. Email groups. Email groups will play a critical role in your preference center because they're the actual subscriptions that you're offering people. Are they subscribing to events? Are they subscribing to this newsletter or that newsletter, or maybe another type of newsletter, 3 different newsletters, so maybe 3 different email groups, depending on how you want to configure that. So the email groups are great because they're built from the ground up to offer an individual subscribe or unsubscribe function. Really simple stuff and logical. Contact fields. So where do we store the preferences? So it could be the contact fields. I'd probably lean towards having them on a custom object. I'll expand on that a little bit later if you like. But yeah, I think that would be a better place to do it. And then, of course, a multi-step campaign, because you need an autoresponder. Now, of course, you can just shoot one email out following the form, but we want to think about what happens next. Okay, so at a bare minimum, yes, probably an autoresponder to confirm the information that the person has provided you. But then we want to think about what comes next. And that's where we fall into that idea of a welcome campaign or an onboarding campaign, because hopefully our underlying data will know that when that person fills in the form, are they already in our system? Do we know that they're a member? Do we know they're a customer? Do we know they're an enrolled student, for example? If we know those things, then that becomes a different experience. But if they're net new, that's probably a good candidate for the welcome campaign. Okay. All right, so knowing your audience. So this is the fun part here. What we wanted to look at was building a user-friendly preference center where you're asking great questions that are really helping you build a solid profile of the person that you're talking to. So why create a subscription and preference center? Well, when it comes down to it, the way I looked at it is it really becomes a nice interface between you and your audience and your organization. It enables people to tell you what is really of interest to them. It enables you to also ask questions that you kind of need to help better serve them. But it's an interface, and it's something that you should be using in multiple campaigns. Again, don't just think of it as something that I click on unsubscribe and that's it. The person gets to the preference center. We should be thinking a bit more holistically about what that looks like. Now, if you've been using Eloqua for quite some time, you might be familiar with this type of a subscription center. Now, I use the term subscription center because that's all this does. The nice thing is what Eloqua offers you here out of the box is so much better than many platforms offer. Many have copied as well and do very similar things, but they greet you in such a way that they've resigned themselves to the fact that it's all over. Someone's clicked on unsubscribe, they present a similar type of screen. It's all over. There's no effort to try and stop you or discourage you, not stop you, but discourage you from unsubscribing. So what Eloqua are doing here with their subscription center or subscription status page is just showing you that you have options, that you can control what happens. If you don't want to hear about bookstore sales anymore, that's fine. You can unsubscribe from that. But you don't necessarily have to remove yourself from everything. And that's the globally unsubscribe that you see highlighted at the bottom of the page there. So that's good, and it gives people options. The worst scenario is clicking on a link, that says unsubscribe, and then basically you see a confirmation page saying, goodbye, Derek, thanks for being with us, good luck. That's the worst scenario, okay? We want to give people some control over their experience before they potentially leave you. So it's not a place you send people to sign up to. We can do better. What's the bare minimum of the information that you need in order to talk to people? I'd argue that they come in two, maybe three, but at least two types. There's demographic information that you need, and there's firmographic information that you need. Firmographic being about the account. So demographics, pretty standard. You'll be familiar with these. Now, these will all differ based on everybody who's on the call today. So if you're in financial services, if you're a not-for-profit, if you're a membership-based organization, if you're a university, financial services firm, all different types of questions. There'll be core questions that you all ask, but there are others. Firmographic information is typically account data that's coming through from the CRM. There's not much that we typically, from a best practice point of view, would ask of an individual of the account, really, except for the company name. That's probably about it. We really should be using the CRM and ERP platforms to deliver accurate and correct account information for firmographics. Now, the other one to consider, and this is what I want to talk to you a little bit about making this a nicer experience, is psychographics. If you've been in and around marketing for quite some time, you'll be familiar with the idea that that psychographics is a study typically by researchers to really understand things like values and social status, desires and goals, all of those fun things that help you become smarter in the way that you can reach out to people. Now, we probably don't want to go, many of us on the call today probably don't want to go that far. That's probably just a little bit too far, a little bit too crazy. We don't want to go into that much depth. But I think it helps give us a good framework for some great questions that we can ask people. Okay, so let's have a look. So we have things that you can ask. We've got the subscriptions that we've offered, and that could be events, it could be thought leadership, it could be news and updates, it could be specific newsletters. They're the actual subscriptions that you're offering. What we want to know now are the interests and the preferences of the people that you're actually talking to. So I've just kind of brain dumped a bunch of ideas here, the question or responses that you may get from people, depending on the questions you ask, of course. On the right-hand side, that kind of reflects a little bit about us. So when we ask people in our preference center what they're interested in, these are some examples of things that we throw to them, like, what are you interested in? This and this and that and this and that, and so on and so forth. The only caveat that I would give you is make sure you keep your content strategy in mind. It's very easy to get in a room, do some brainstorming, and get really excited about all these different things that we've got to ask people. But you just need to make sure that you have a content strategy to underpin all of this, so that if somebody does talk to you and say, yeah, I love rock climbing, okay, what on earth are we going to send somebody and talk to them about in relation to rock climbing when we have no idea? So just keep the two connected. Make sure there's a link there between the two. Okay, so 5 psychographic characteristics for you to think about. Now, I got these from a company called Hotjar, and great website, really interesting stuff. I'll share the link in the blog post as well, so you can also go and have a look in a bit more depth. They break all of these down, by the way. So personalities, lifestyles, interests, values, opinions, attitudes, and beliefs. Again, some of these we probably want to steer clear from in our more B2B type of environment. But maybe it's a question like this. So which is your preferred method to consume work-related content? Is it webinar? Is it in person? Is it a workshop? So just a response to that sort of question can really help shape some of the invitations that you may send out to people. Maybe this one's a little bit more lifestyle oriented. So, on a Friday night, where would we find you? High school football match, the ballet, out for dinner with friends. And so at the back end, what you can do is take those responses and potentially start to think about matching to a persona type of point of view. Okay. Now, the other one that they talk about, again from Hotjar, is now buyer behavior. So now this starts to feel a little bit more in our Eloqua space, right? And this is a little bit more about buyer journey, buyer behavior, those sorts of things. So priority initiatives, perceived barriers, success factors, buyer's journey, and decision criteria. So here, what we want to do now is ask questions of people that are going to give us an indication of where they are in their decision criteria, where they are in relation to what does success look like for them. What's your primary pain point for your business today? Is it headcount? Is it the right skills? Is it defining our problem? Whatever it might be. So all of the responses that you get are going to help you to understand where that buyer is and kind of what their challenges are, and hopefully then being able to tailor your messages. How would you best describe your position right now? We're researching, we're discussing selected vendors, or we're allocating budget. This is going to help you understand probably from a buying journey, kind of how far down that funnel they are, if you call it a funnel still, but wherever it may be. So the right questions can really just help give you the right information to understand where the person is and what they're doing. So why do we ask all of these questions? Well, we want to bring it all together because that's how, with that underlying first-party data, we can then start to build far more personalized segments or audiences. Okay, and the other key thing is you want to introduce this concept of the preference center and ask these questions as early as possible in the relationship. So whether it's part of the welcome campaign, that probably makes a lot of sense in your preference center, but to think about other opportunities that you've got to ask those questions as early as you possibly can. And we have express preferences. People have told you exactly what they're interested in. They've actually subscribed to specific subscriptions or email groups. That's going to give you a bit of a heads up as to kind of where their interests lie. And don't forget, you've also got implicit data. So this is what Eloqua is tracking in relation to website visits, maybe it's webinar attendance at different things, all those different topics, etc., are going to help also give you a bit of an idea. We can have that all come together using the segment area within Eloqua. One of the nicest ones is subscription groups. So subscribe to groups. This one's great. It's so simple, nice and easy. It's right there within the platform. Those who are subscribed, those who are unsubscribed, you've got date parameters there. Typically, as of now, is the general one you would use, but you could say, were they subscribed before this date, after this date? So you've got a whole range of filters you could apply built in. And if people have unsubscribed, then fantastic. Eloqua will take care of it and won't send them an email. So that's a good thing. But in here, we can also access their preferences and their interests, etc., whether it's from a custom object or whether it's from the contact, regardless of where you kind of have that information. You've got it all available there. So this is the contact. Now, I did say to you before that preferences could be stored on the contact or on the custom object. I have them here on the contact. This is my contact within our instance of Eloqua, probably a little bit more from a demo point of view to show people who are maybe looking at Eloqua. I would it just is easier to store it on the custom object. It has it's just a better solution, I think, for it. Plus, you typically want your contact to have other details as well. But you've got options. It really depends. It's completely up to you as to what's important. Hopefully what we've done there is cover a few things. First of all, why a preference center, looking at the specific tools within Eloqua to help you build out that preference center. And then why do we do it? We do it largely to help us tailor communications moving forward. The preference center is a way for people to express to you exactly what they're interested in and then give you an opportunity to tailor your communications and help them on their buyer's journey or their onboarding journey, or whatever their journey may be. So let's have a look at some of the 25D release updates, some of the new Gen AI capability that's available and is on its way to you. Okay, so the release 25D is due right now. It's actually rolling out as we speak. Those on pod 1 are already live. The other pods will follow the last ones will run through on the 15th of November. So what's in there? For those who potentially are playing with the Eloqua source editor, that's the HTML building capability, the Redwood experience is being rolled out across that as well. So it is available through a controlled availability, or CA, which means you need to request Eloqua or Oracle to turn that on for you. There's no cost involved. It's just a matter of requesting it to be turned on. The audit log within Area, so those who are administrators will probably have access at the home screen to the audit log. That has now been switched to the Redwood Experience interface. I got to say, it's just kind of easier to look at the information. It's a bit more visual, it just modernizes the interface, as we're seeing with Redwood. The content assistant, so this is fun. This is looking at taking what we've been doing with Gen AI within Eloqua and taking it even further now with options to rewrite, lengthen, shorten, or bulletize your emails, landing pages, dynamic content, shared content, editors. Just taking it that little bit step further. Past, we were able to just put in some content or write some prompts and it will give you some ideas. Now what you can do is give it content, ask it to bulletize it, rewrite it, lengthen, shorten, all that sort of stuff. So there's more flexibility available, which is kind of fun. Now, next one, generative AI services will be available from Frankfurt for selected pods. So these pods are outside of the US, I think, to start with. Don't hold me to that. I know pod 7 definitely is, and pod 8 certainly is. I have a feeling 6 is in Virginia from memory. The point is your instance of Eloqua is not moving off those pods. It just simply means that people who have Eloqua on those pods, the generative AI services which were happening out of Chicago will be migrating and moving to Frankfurt in the European Union, which for data privacy reasons and legislation, all sorts of different things, is far more attractive to some of the non-US based companies, just as a FYI. Single sign-on, if security is ever a concern for you, which really should be for most of us, if you're running single sign-on within your organization, you now have an optional security enhancement. That means that you can force everybody to only be able to get into Eloqua using single sign-on. Okay, and if that's something that you feel is required, or maybe IT have been pushing to make that happen, well, that can happen now. So again, have a chat with my Oracle support or with Marketing Cube, and we can help you with either of those. Deliverability, sender from address validation coming to Eloqua. We're still expanding on this one. Our team understand what it's doing, but it's in relation to the ramifications of the change that we're trying to get a little bit more detail of and understand. So once we have a bit more clarity on that and the impact of those changes, we will come back to you with more information, probably in December. If not, please subscribe to our important updates. You'll find subscriptions on our website, and you can sign up there and receive information on that. The final set of updates that you'll see is bot click detection service. So this is really just enhancing what Eloqua is doing today, but helping make sure that the bots and their engagement with your content is being separated from the human, essentially, is what that's looking at. Campaign permissions, a little bit more granularity, being able to control the campaign creation, so separating campaign create and the default permissions within the campaign type for greater clarity. So if you've got different audiences and you want to be able to have some create multi-step campaigns and some only create guided campaigns, well, now you can do that. In the past, it was just campaigns. Now you can kind of separate the two out, which is helpful. Webhooks, if that's something that you're playing with, we certainly have a number of clients who are taking advantage of some of the newer webhook functionality within Eloqua and its ability to talk now further with external platforms. Webhooks are kind of good fun and can do some cool things. What's on the agenda for next month? So next month, we figured the most logical thing to do was to take what we've looked at today with our preference center and what happens next in that journey. So next is onboarding, it's welcome campaigns, and we'll be diving into those in a little bit more detail for you. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you making some time, and I look forward to seeing you next month on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next month.